Welcome to Newshour. Tonight we're turning our attention to the global rise of esports, a sector that's moved well beyond living rooms and internet cafes. What was once considered a niche pursuit has grown into a structured industry with organised leagues, large-scale events and increasing international recognition. Well, one of the organisations behind this shift is the Global Esports Federation, formed in 2019 and based in Singapore. It was created to bring a degree of structure and coordination to a space that's historically been fragmented. Since its inception, it's worked with game developers, national bodies, and traditional sports institutions to try and provide a more unified framework for esports. Well, our guest tonight is Mr. Paul J. Foster, CEO of the Global Esports Federation. He brings a background in international sports administration, including previous roles connected to the Olympic movement. Under his leadership, the Federation has launched events such as the Global Esports Games and promoted initiatives linked to education, digital literacy, and player well-being. We're going to discuss whether esports needs central governance, how it interacts with traditional sport, and what challenges lie ahead as the sector grows in influence and reach. Paul, thank you very much for coming in and joining us. It's lovely to have you here at our studios. I'd like to start with a broad question, really. Tell us about the mission, the vision of the Federation.
Thanks, Guy, and thanks for having us here today. When we created the Global Esports Federation in Singapore in 2019, we really set about with a mission to convene the whole world of esports, and that included the community, and as you said, also all the involved publishers who make these incredible games, and the technology and innovators who are driving the future of esports and gaming. So it was really around a convening body to bring all the elements together.
And of course your background, as we said there, involves traditional sports, the Olympics too. You've been working with traditional sports bodies as well, haven't you? What's that learning process been like?
Well, I think it was one of the things in esports and gaming, which is fantastic and fascinating. We didn't want to govern esports when we came together. We wanted to convene, and we were very careful about the words we chose. We have a very dynamic community, largely of young people who are really interested to be part of the community. It's a community of 3.5 billion people, so nearly half the world is playing games. And so the experience to work with traditional sport at first was probably one of pause. And then of course we had the COVID come along shortly thereafter, and our work, while sport really stopped, our sport and esports really accelerated, and we've never really turned back.
And I suppose, given your global reach, it's quite difficult to pinpoint such a thing as a typical esports fan. But where do you find, would we perhaps be surprised by what the typical esports fan might look like?
Yeah, I think we would be surprised. I think there's a traditional sort of stereotype of what we think about gaming, but one of the things that's not perhaps clear, just like in traditional sports, in esports there's an enormous plethora of different what we call genre of games. So whether or not we like traditional sort of esports games or simulated sports games or strategy games or team games, there's something kind of for everyone. And one of the things that we've discovered in our journey over these last 5 years has really been that there's something for families, there's something for communities that are really focused on certain types of games. And I was talking about this earlier today, actually. You get real different audience shifts depending on the type of game you're playing. So I think it's something from young, but also something right through to much older age. And that's something we're particularly interested about during this time of also what I call a global crisis on isolation, and particularly for older people. Gaming has also been something that can include them as well.
That's very interesting. So there are many older people who are really enthusiastic about esports.
Well, one of the things about esports is that we have this sort of view that it's always around young people, and of course it is, but one of the things is that older people really like to connect inside the community. And our motto at Global Esports Federation is one simple word. In fact, it's two words put together: world connected. And so we prioritize that sense of connection, particularly in a time where we were super isolated. It gave us a sense of connection. And in older people, there's games that they will like to play that enables them to be hyper-connected into their communities around the world. And I think it also talks to a shift, Guy, in the way that we actually communicate as people. So when we think about gaming and esports, it's not just an activity that we do, it's really part of our life.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And you spoke about older people there, also about families. Esports is a phenomena that many young people, many children are also interested in. Because of that, as you're building the ecosystem, do you need to be especially careful about the decisions that are made about sponsors, about what you bring into the environment?
Yeah, I think Global Esports Federation, like any other federation looking after sport, we have a certain responsibility. And I think there's two parts of that. One that talks about a resource to maybe schools, parents, people who maybe don't know much about it or would like to know more. Maybe we've got concerns, so we can be a source of information and support. But as well as that, I think we have certain frameworks and guidelines around the activities that we engage with. And we have certain rules and regulations for behaviours and welfare and those sort of elements. And these are rooted in our 5 universal values that talk about equality, fair play, diversity, inclusion, and importantly as well, innovation. So there's a framework as opposed to sort of rigorous rules, but actually at competition we have very rigorous rules that are set.
And you have, as you've had for some time, a truly global remit from Australia to Singapore to LA and everywhere in between. But as we were talking before the show, you were also talking about this country, Azerbaijan, and this region, and your sense that there's something exciting happening here.
Yeah, I fell in love with Azerbaijan, and when I came to work on the European Games, and it was the first ever European Games, and I've kept coming back, and I worked on the Islamic Solidarity Games, and I worked on also our bid for World Expo. But during that time also, as you said, Guy, I was also in other parts of the region, and in terms of the Caucasus, but also the Middle East as well, and right across Europe. And so there's a dynamic energy here, and I always, whenever I'm able to, I come back to Azerbaijan because I find this energy of achievement. And even having not been here for a little bit more than a year, the incredible pace of change and progress in the city and right across the country is just incredibly impressive. And so I want to be part of that, and we want to be part of that. So it's always great to check in with what's going on in Azerbaijan and see how we can help.
And I'd like to talk a bit about education and the role for education in esports. A word that I've heard for a long time, although I'm never quite sure exactly what it means, is gamification. What is the right role for education, and how does esports interface with educational institutions? Yeah,
we might remember just a few years ago, maybe some parents and some teachers might have been a little bit anti-gaming and seen it as sort of a sedentary behaviour or something on the margins of life. And then, of course, again, the pandemic came in to bear, and teachers, schools, educations, universities reached out to us, as well as traditional sports, and said, how could you help to digitalise our activities? Because we know when we do that, we keep, again, young people very engaged, because it's a medium that they feel very comfortable with. It's a place, a safe place for them, and it's a place that they feel comfortable with. So the gamification of education, the gamification of recruitment, the gamification of many aspects of our lives. Of course, we're in the middle of the 4th Industrial Revolution, isn't a surprise to me, but it's a great tool that can be used to bring people towards something through something that they're very, very comfortable with, like playing games, which of course I always say is something extremely human. playing games is extremely human. So no surprise that we're playing electronic games in the Industrial Revolution.
And Paul, where do new technologies like augmented reality, virtual reality, where is that going to go? How realistic are esports going to get, do you think?
Well, I think the two answers to that, I think one of the exciting points, Guy, would be that we don't know. But one of the exciting things is we have a role to play by enabling young people to participate in that journey. So what we know is that technology is moving at a faster pace than it's ever had in our human history. And yes, it's being lit by the advances in AI, but in every single part of technology, it's becoming quicker, more capable, and in fact more affordable as well as we go on. Behind this, you've got an incredible creator economy. So you've got this whole creative economy now where we live and breathe with social media and creative economy, where literally every single person on the planet can be producing content in some way, shape or form, and in fact can be producing games. And so the advances of AI and technologies generally make it faster to produce incredible games and much more affordable to do something that used to cost an incredible amount of money and also take an incredible amount of time.
I've been lucky enough to interview some of those famous creators, and one of the things I notice is they don't like regulation and oversight so much. I mean, that must be a difficult challenge for your organisation to balance that freedom with the need to make sure everything's done in a responsible way.
Yeah, I think it is, and I would be the first one to say that when we started, there was resistance around something called the Global Esports Federation and the concept and construct around that. But what we did pretty quickly is we went and listened. And we said, how could we be helpful? What do you need? This is what we think. This is what traditional sport has brought to my life. Could we bring this into esports? And some of those examples we've spoken about, but including foundations, partnerships, investment capital, and sort of creating a maturity into the market somehow and offering help and guidance. And now we see, of course, the very most exciting moment in our lives, which is the recent announcement of the creation by the International Olympic Committee of the Olympic Esports Games. And that was done during the Paris 2024 Olympic Games not so long ago, a few months ago, last summer. And so that's an enormous step forward for everyone in gaming and esports.
So the Global Esports Games, still the flagship event. Tell us about that. Tell us about what we can expect, perhaps viewers that are not yet familiar with that event.
Yeah, so when we created the Global Esports Federation in Singapore, it became very obvious to us pretty rapidly that we needed to have an event. We needed to do something. We needed to have something to show people what it was really all about. And so we created something called the Global Esports Games. And really this was around representing your country on an international stage, on a magnificent setting, at a prestigious event such as this, where countries would compete against countries for the glory of their nation. So it wasn't about money, it wasn't about prize money, it wasn't about those things. It was about being able to represent your nation on a stage. So that's what it's about. And it's about a multi-title event. So we don't just have one type of game, we have multiple types of games. And then we have what we call our festival, which is a celebration of music, culture, food, fashion, all the things around gaming. And then we have something called JeffCon, which is a celebration of our thought leadership and the people who are the movers and the shakers, if you like, from the gaming industry. And so we're really, really excited about that. Our first games were staged in our headquarters of Singapore, our second games in Istanbul, our third games in Riyadh, and this year will be in Lima, Peru for our fourth games. So really a truly global offering to the community.
Finally, Paul, you've got this incredibly broad remit. We've got this huge latent demand for esports and a complex job to do in terms of regulation. With all that in mind, what do your sort of priorities look like over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think that 5 years in, and with the Olympic Esports Games in 2027 on the horizon, I think we've still got some work to do in parts of the world that are uncharted. And I'm talking about Africa there, I'm talking about Oceania there, and then other markets are a bit more developed, such as Azerbaijan, the Caucasus, the Middle East, Europe, how we can help them mature and how we can help maybe create some investment opportunities as well to sort of mature the market even further. So that's sort of something where I think the foundations are laid. I think the future, at least the immediate future, is pretty bright and we can see it, and then what we can do to sort of bolster it and accelerate even more.
Well, we wish you well with that challenge. Paul, thank you so much for coming in to speak to us.
Thank you, Guy.
So as esports continues to expand in popularity then and scale, questions around governance, player welfare and international coordination are becoming more pressing. The Global Esports Federation, under the leadership of Mr. Foster, is just one of several bodies attempting to address these challenges and shape what the future of competitive gaming might look like. Well, that is all from us on the team here at NewsHour in Baku. Goodbye for now.